In today's world, it's easy to get caught up in the objective metrics of life, to reduce the moments that we should be paying attention to and enjoying to nothing more than numbers on a balance sheet. And it's not just in a hustle culture kind of way. It can be easy to get caught up like this with anything, quantity over quality, all the while ignoring the point of making these memories in the first place. Did you enjoy it? Did you make friends with your fellow enthusiasts at the track? Did you take the time to truly feel the joy of driving at speed? Did you stop and appreciate the person or people standing next to you while we spend our very limited time in our insignificant place in the universe? Anyway, we're as guilty of it as anyone. In our testing, it can be easy to fixate on the numbers. What is a tire capable of? Whether that's lap times, braking distance, lateral traction, or even watt hours per mile, the temptation is always present to reduce the tires we're testing to a collection of measurements and to view the test vehicle simply as the tool we use to extract them.
Even though we provide significant amounts of objective data for every test, the final results, what determines the test winner, is the subjective scores, how the tire feels when we're driving it. Because that feel matters. The subjective truly matters.
See, when you own a classic car, it's generally not because of the 0 to 60 time, or how quickly it laps the Nürburgring, or really anything that you can actually measure. It's the intangibles. It's the smells, the sounds, the looks, the way it feels, and the way it makes you feel when you drive it.
Believe it or not, putting the wrong tires on your classic car is one of the quickest ways to change the whole experience and possibly even ruin some of the character it originally had.
Yeah, almost every other component of the vehicle is designed around the tire's characteristics. So things like spring rate for tuning the final ride quality, or steering response and overall balance for the handling behavior, and of course the tire's available traction, all were considerations before the designers said, yes, this is what we want this car to be.
To preserve the original character of these classic automobiles, tire manufacturers have introduced lines that blend modern materials and construction methods with period-correct performance and aesthetics. Michelin Classic tires, Pirelli Collezione, Vredestein's Classic lines, and a couple others feature options for vehicles from the 1920s to the 1990s, including sports cars, muscle cars, modern classics, even vintage delivery vehicles and pickup trucks.
Yeah, so tell us again, this was... Currently, it's my great-grandfather-in-law's car. So much about cars to me is memory. So like with this car, it was time with my dad. Like you live in a house and you grow in a house. But with a car, you kind of go back in time to a place in time that a memory serves you.
To find out how much of a difference a simple tire swap can make, in this test we're using a 1980 MG MGB to compare the Michelin XAS and Vredestein Sprint Classic, along with a modern radial that just happens to be available in the right size for the car.
It's so much smaller and more intimate than I'm used to.
At the same time, we have a 1980 Triumph TR8 we're going to use to compare the Michelin XDXB and the Vredestein Sprint Classic to another modern radial. In this instance, we've committed the common path of least resistance act of using a size that's close enough to what originally came on the vehicle.
Well, we're honored. We really appreciate you doing this, and we're going to take great care of her.
Well, I'm interested to see how it does and the results.
For our standard road ride evaluation, we used our usual route and drove with the tops up in an effort to provide impressions for our 3 normal criteria: ride quality, noise comfort, and steering and on-road handling.
Despite that uncomfortably hot effort, the wind, engine, and exhaust noise from our vintage cars significantly exceeded almost any sound the tires could generate, so we limited our evaluation to ride quality and steering and handling. Beginning with the MG, the Michelin XAS fit the nature of the vehicle like they were designed for one another. The ride was nicely cushioned, taking bumps and impacts of all sizes in stride and turning them into a non-event. The experience was plush and surprisingly refined. The steering was equally relaxed and appropriate for the car. The significant dead zone around center paired well with the steering rack to provide a reasonable sense of straight-line tracking, and it responded linearly and naturally. Where the Michelin felt like a plush, touring-focused tire, the Vredestein Sprint Classic had a noticeably sportier persona. It was more tightly sprung, revealing the imperfections in the road and creating a slightly stiffer experience overall. The steering followed suit. It was heavier and faster to respond, leading to a more eager, enthusiastic feel at the front end. The modern tire was a noticeably different experience, if not hugely so. It was stiffer over all impacts, which led to feeling slightly disconnected from the road as the body of the car moved about and the vehicle traveled straight ahead. The steering was quick immediately off center, but with significant input it became overly heavy and non-responsive.
The Triumph we sourced had some minor suspension modifications that gave it a more performance-focused sports car personality that matched very nicely with the Sprint Classic. The steering in particular was just right for the car. It had a small dead spot on center that kept the vehicle from wandering, and then it responded and loaded up quickly, building effort and response in a natural, satisfying way. The ride was firm in both tires, particularly at lower speeds. As the speed increased, impact seemed like less of an event, so it may have been an attribute of the test vehicle we used. The XDXB found much less favor in this application. While the ride matched the Vredestein, the steering was a significant step back. The very large dead spot around center meant it felt loose at low speeds and took noticeably more input before responding to the wheel. A distinct lack of self-aligning torque was also an odd characteristic that required the driver to deliberately return the wheel to center following turns. The modern tire delivered ride quality that was slightly stiffer than the other two products, and also introduced some bump steer to the vehicle's behavior. The steering was responsive just off center, but some non-linearity in the feedback through the steering wheel was less than satisfying for our team.
After our standard road ride, we took a moment to drop the tops and then headed back out to push the tires a little harder on some winding backcountry roads. The picturesque setting was the ideal situation to enjoy these vintage sports cars and the tires the way they were intended.
We're on the Michelin XAS. And Brent, you want to know a fun little fact about the Michelin XAS?
What?
It's the first tire ever to have an asymmetric tread design. You know, we found on the road that the Michelin XAS is a bit softer, a little bit more compliant.
Yeah.
But, you know, it feels like it works with the suspension.
It's absolutely right. That's the first thing I thought when we started hitting some mild bumps and some cracks. It's like it's appropriately plush.
Right. It sort of soaks the bumps up and absorbs them instead of upsetting the car and, you know, moving the car around. You see it, you expect it, and it just goes right over the top of it. So it really helps kind of keep the car planted and makes you feel more secure when you are driving a bit more enthusiastically when you're on these maybe not perfect roads, right? What about the steering? We're going around almost a 90-degree corner here on the back roads. There could be somebody coming in the opposite lane. What?
I'm ready for it.
You're ready for it?
There's not a lot of response right on center.
Okay.
That's okay.
It kind of goes with the character of the vehicle, right?
It's kind of how this car steers. So once again, it does kind of complement it in that way too.
Yep.
It feels natural.
I agree.
And I don't want to keep saying this because it's kind of what you would expect, what we would expect, but it feels right.
All right, so we're on the XDXB, and compared to the way it felt on the road, it is a step up on our backcountry road ride. It comes alive a little bit more, let's say. Still not perfect for the car.
Yeah, you know, because when we look for things kind of in isolation on the road ride route, it kind of stands out as a little lacking. But you're right.
The TR8 is maybe not completely original. No, there's no maybe about it. It's not completely original. There's a lot of aftermarket parts in terms of suspension. The XDXB feels different on this car than the other two tires that we're comparing it to. You know, the ride, it's a little firm, it's a little stiff, it's moving the car around quite a bit. Yeah. The steering is responsive enough, but there's really not any real feel to it.
You do feel it on some of the rougher roads on this backcountry loop, but yeah, everything is just much firmer. And yeah, the XDXB doesn't work as well on this as the, well, completely different Michelin Classic line tire on the MG.
Vredestein Sprint Classic, what do you feel from the wheel?
It's more responsive right off center. One of the critiques we had of the XAS of the Michelin was there was a lot of movement on center. It's a little quicker. It's a little more responsive. It's not a lot more responsive, but it's nice. It kind of takes up some slack.
It builds response sooner, and when it does, it's faster to do so, right? Which makes it feel pointier on these kind of enthusiastic back road blasts. Jaunts, yes. Yeah. Though, does it fit the nature of the car as much? I suppose that's more of a rhetorical question, but feel free. Like, does it?
Yes, yes. No, the steering complements the car. You know, we always say, hey, tires make a difference. If you are in Sonoma County and you're hitting those vineyard roads and they're smooth, you're going to appreciate the sharper response. It makes the car feel sportier.
What if you're not in Sonoma County? Say you're in northern Indiana somewhere where you have freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing.
What are you talking about?
And your roads aren't perfectly smooth.
You pay a price with the Vredestein at least, and that is ride, as you've indicated. You're going to appreciate the sharper handling because you're going to want to dodge the potholes a little bit more with the Vredestein.
You know, the Sprint Classic, it maybe didn't feel like it quite fit the laid-back nature of the MG. It pairs up with this vehicle, this roarty, snorty, kind of angry-sounding vehicle.
It does. The car is already firm enough to where the slightly firmer Vredestein doesn't really make that big of a change. It's okay. They are complementary of each other. They're both a little stiffer. Where it does absolutely help is the steering.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
We really felt it on a road rider out, and we feel it back here too.
Right. At speed, you know, everything kind of seems to firm up in this car, so it's less of a difference between the Michelin and the Vredestein, but even so, you can still feel the Vredestein. It points the nose of the car better, and with this car that has some aftermarket suspension parts on it, you know, it already feels like it wants to be a bit more of a serious sports car, and the Sprint Classic, it complements that a lot. Okay, so now we're driving on our modern tire. It's a standard construction, normal, you know, steel belted radial type tire. It in no way was designed to be used in a classic car from the outset. It just happens to be the right size, which that is an avenue that people take from time to time. It fits, it's inexpensive. All right, I'll take it, I'll put it on the car. What are you feeling here on the more windy backcountry roads?
It's fine. If you want to get down the road, but you don't quite know what you're missing until you've driven the other classic tires. Yep. I'll stop short of saying it feels bad, but it doesn't feel as good.
It doesn't, the car doesn't have the same personality. The car doesn't feel the same.
It communicates everything.
Everything.
It's like, oh, I can actually feel some connection to the road. We have connection to the environment and space right now. I don't need more communication from the road.
What about the steering?
It's very quick to respond, which again can be good, but
it's not exactly what I want when the car's already jittery though, you know, from the ride, it's not, And on this tire, it's like you get through that dead spot faster, and then you get to the weight, and it's by contrast maybe, it just feels even heavier. It feels leaden was the word that I used in my notes. So it's not as big a difference between the modern tires and the classic tires on this as it was on the MG.
It's not.
Even so though, I still find myself kind of bracing for impacts more than I did in the other tires. You see it, and it's not as big of an event as your mind says it's going to be, but even so, it's stiffer. Like things hit a little bit harder.
It's a thump, not a thwack, but it's still a significant thump, especially on the potholes.
What'd you think about the steering when you drove it?
That was its worst trait. That's really what makes it stand out compared to the other tires for me. Like we said, a little more modern vehicle, probably a little more modern steering. But the modern tire feels vague. It has no self-aligning torque. You have to pull it back the other way. You have to push it. You know, it's an even amount of resistance to get it to do something. It just stops talking to you mid-corner. But yeah, it's almost like, hey, maybe this isn't working with this era vehicle, because then it doesn't know what to do. It's just like, what do you What do you mean? You want more steering?
This is all that I'm designed to
Yeah,
give you.
it just goes into like limp mode is steering racks. It's just like,
So, even on this, as we keep saying, somewhat modern vehicle that has been slightly modified, is not particularly original, we're still not really happy with the modern tire in this application.
no. Is it worth it to buy these premium products for your vintage automobile?
The MG is much more original, less modified, just feels very true to how it rolled off the lot.
For sure.
And in that instance, yeah, I absolutely would go with the vintage tire.
Yeah.
If you have already changed the personality of the car from what it was, a la the Triumph that we have, that's going to depend a lot on the individual, the driver, and their wants, their desires.
Since these are borrowed cars, we didn't push them to the limits on the track, but we were curious to see how the tires affect the experience when driven slightly harder than you would on a public road.
Wish us luck.
Beginning once again with the MG, it wasn't much of a surprise that the Sprint Classic felt more at home on the track, with quicker, more responsive steering that built cornering force sooner and with less input. We experienced a small amount of rear-end engagement, but at all times the car felt solidly planted, with less tire slip even at the low speeds we limited ourselves to. The XAS once again felt like more of a touring-focused product, with softer steering response and front axle traction limits that were lower and easier to overstep. The modern tire delivered mixed results. The outright traction felt as high as the Vredestein, and it had very nice steering just off center. This made it feel alert through the slalom, but when we dialed in more steering for larger changes of direction, the response slowed significantly, and it seemed to fall flat. As a whole, the experience felt like it was more work than with either of the other two tires.
On our modified Triumph, the XDX-B and the Sprint Classic had slightly different characteristics, but the separation between them was minor. Through the slalom, the XDX-B seemed to have more gain, with the front end eliciting more response before the rear differential aggressively rotated the car. The Sprint Classic responded proportionately with steering input, only pointing the nose as much as the driver requested. One place we noticed greater separation was in front axle traction. Here, the Michelin gripped harder and longer before giving up, with the Vredestein pushing into understeer at the same speed and with the same input. The modern tire turned the responsiveness up a notch, which felt good paired with the eager nature of the TR8. Communication through the steering wheel was lacking once it was more than slightly off-center, and the overall traction was a match for the Michelin.
You know, it's not huge. It's not a monumental difference, but you really can feel that the different tires pair better with the different personalities of the cars, right?
Yeah, their tires still matter. Even to two similar classic cars, we found some significant differences. It changed the personality, like you said.
Yep.
And the looks,
Oh, geez,
the looks alone, that's huge.
Yes, it is.
That really does finish off the car. This would look out of place with a modern radial.
It sure would. Which car do you like better?
They're very different, but I like the MG.
I know.
Which one do you like better?
I like the Triumph.
It's not a bad choice.
Not a bad choice.
It's the wrong choice.
No, you're the wrong choice.
I'll take this one.
At the end of the day, literally, that's what classic car ownership is all about. It's about sliding behind the wheel of a car you want to drive home. The feel, the smells, the sounds, and the look. It's all part of the experience and what makes it an experience, what makes it truly special. The perfect sunset after the perfect day, and of course, the perfect tires to get you there.